Hello, I'm Nicola from Daisy and Grace, and today on my YouTube channel I am going to be making a zip tray bag. What's a zip tray bag? It's one of these. They look like a pencil case or a makeup bag case or something like that. But the magic is when you open it, it opens out into a tray. And so you can put all your little bits and bobs in there. So when it's all open, you can just have all your things in one place contained. So great if you're going to quilt groups or travelling or anything like that, or if you've got an appointment at the hospital, it'll sit on your lap, it contains everything. It's a tray, so nothing will fall out. And then when you're done, you just pop the poppers on and zip it up and you're ready to go. So how is this made? Well, this is made using my 2.5 inch square Quilt As You Go template. That's the only template you need. There is a pattern as well. So there is a pattern with full photographs and instructions in there. And obviously you've got this YouTube video now as well. If you're to buy the 2.5 inch template, you can get the pattern for half price. That will be half price on checkout. So if you buy the two, you get them half price. I also have various kits available. At the moment, there's the two Tula pink ones and a Moda Pixel. And the one I'm going to be demonstrating will be a kit as well. That you can do, that you can make it by machine or by hand. This is completely made by hand, this one. So I've inserted the zip by hand, I've sewn all the squares by hand, all by hand, not touched a sewing machine at all. And this one has been made on the machine. This one I've put some fusible caddy tray interlining in it, so it's a bit firmer. This one has just got wadding, so it's not as firm, but just as beautiful. In the kits, you're going to get a panel of wadding, so you're going to have to cut your own wadding, but you won't get the interlining. The caddy tray interlining isn't included, because this is something I decided to do a bit later. So, shall we start the tutorial? Yes, let's. So, first things first, throwing those aside. This works perfectly with the jelly roll wadding strips, if you've got those, because all you're going to have to do, is bear with, is cut your square. It's the 2.5 inch is the right size. If you do want to put interlining on it, let's go to the overhead. If you do want to put interlining on it, you just need to cut a 2.5 inch strip of that, fuse it in place, and then cut your squares. I'd recommend fusing it in place, then cutting your squares. It's just a little bit easier. So let's put my glasses on. Let's remove that, because I have cut some already. So I've cut the wadding, I have cut the main fabric, and I have cut the backing. So I'm going to show you how to do the square first, and then we'll go from there, because it all starts with a square. So let's zoom in a little. Oh, it doesn't show up very well on the green. I didn't anticipate that. But you can see it, it is there. What you're going to do is pop your backing on your board and place your outer template on top of your backing. Now, if there's a right and a wrong side, you need the wrong side facing up and the right side down. But this doesn't have a wrong and right side, so that's fine. So place that template back on top. This is the beauty of the Quilt As You Go templates. So this is what you cut your your main fabric and your wadding out of is the centre of this template. But when that's removed, that gives you the ability to place your wadding in the centre and also your main fabric, so that goes on top. And I am going to take some of my magic pins. They're magic because you can iron over them. They're magic because they stay sharp forever. I've had these for donkey's years and they stay sharp. Now I've pinned that in place, as you can see, and I've removed the template. So first thing you're going to do is, this is like a quilt in its own right. So the first thing I'm going to do is do the binding. So the first thing is you fold that binding over to meet the edge of the inner wadding and main fabric. And you're going to finger press that in place. Some people like to glue it. I don't find it helps for me, but if that helps for you, you go ahead and glue it. That's absolutely fine. But for me, I rather just pin it. Now I've rolled that over so the edge of the square is there. I've rolled that again and finger press that. Now I am going to pin this because this one I'm going to be making by machine. If I'm sewing by hand, I like to use the little clips so that I don't prick myself with the pins. But because I'm doing this by machine, I'm going to pin it. And as you can see, I've really finger pressed these edges down, and we're going to do the next edge. So it's same again, fold that edge over to meet the inside, and on the square I am just going to fold that little, like a little pizza wedge in that corner before I double turn it, and that gives me a nice crisp line down here, and I'm going to pop a pin in that corner. They are sharp because I've just pricked my finger. See what I mean? And then we're going to go all the way around the square. Now you can mitre your corners. There's a bit more hand sewing with the mitering technique because this mitre needs sewing up, otherwise bits poke out. I just like this method, but the mitered method is in the template instructions. So if you want to do mitered corners, those instructions are included in your template. And it's fairly easy to go all the way round, and I'm on that last edge. So I've just folded that again, and then I've got two corners to just tuck in that little pizza wedge in. So put a pin in there and a pin in the middle. And just this end one, I've taken that middle pin out because I don't want any impressions of that pin when I come to press it. So I've just folded that last corner over. Now I'm going to bring in my pressing mat. There we go. And I'm going to bring in my iron. And I'm just going to give those edges a press. Now as you can see, it doesn't matter that the pins are there because they can be ironed on, and actually if you hold it by the silicone, you're not going to get burnt either. They're pretty cool, they are. I sounded like Yoda then. They're pretty cool, they are. Totally bonkers, as you know I am. There we go. I've given that a nice press. Now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. So here we are at the sewing machine. Now I am using a white or off-white thread so that you can see what I'm doing because of the grey. So I'm just going to pop that under the sewing machine and take that initial pin out, and it's done a stay stitch. Oops. And then we're sewing all the way along to this corner here. Try and keep my hands out of the way so you can, and don't sew over your pins like I've just done. And I'm going to sew right to the edge, and then I'm swinging my square around, And then I'm going to come back a couple of stitches and then come down this edge here. I'll show you when I finish sewing it. I'll show you on the overhead where I've sewn, because you'll be able to see it with this white thread. Now I recommend that you either stitch with a coordinating thread or an invisible thread, because you don't really want to see these stitches unless you do something very artistic and do an embroidery stitch to sew these edges. That would be pretty cool. Oops. So I'm going back down the edges that are free. I will show you in a second. Let's get to the end. Do a little stay stitch and we're done. Let's go to this camera and you will be able to see. Let me cut these threads off so that you can actually see what I've done. Voila. And this is why you don't really want a contrast thread, because you can see your stitches. I've got one here that I've done in a coordinating thread to the binding, and as you see, well, you can't really see the seams, but this is solely for the purpose of showing you where I've stitched. So I've started here. I'm using my scissors to show you where I've gone. So I've gone down here to this edge, then I've gone back a couple of stitches, then I've gone to this side, gone down here, gone back, gone to this edge, gone across this side, back, and finished here. So on the back you can see I've gone down, well, I've gone down, up, down, down. So you're closing all of these little edges here. Okay, so now I want to join these two. So I'm going to again take that to the sewing machine and use a zigzag stitch. So here we are, and I'm going to put that on a fairly large zigzag, and what I'm doing, I'm placing these shapes together. I'm not pushing them together, I'm just so that they meet up together. And then I'm going to put that under the sewing machine, and I'm going to do a couple of zigzags, then I'm going back, and then I'm coming forward again. There we go. And I'm not pushing them together, they're just touching. And when I get to this end, I will do a couple of zigzags again to secure and finish my stitch. Let's go to this camera and you can see I have stitched down and I've done a couple of zigzags at each end. Now again, I've got one that I have done with coordinating thread, and you can't really see the difference. Well, you can't really see the stitches, whereas here you can see what I've done, and I've just zigzagged those together. So I've got one more I'm going to zigzag together, and these are my top two pieces for the zip to go in. So let's just go back to the sewing machine and zigzag these together as well. So a couple of zigzags back on myself and then forward again. I'll just move that out of the way, it's catching on my pin dish. Right to the end. And a couple back and cut. So we've joined all three. I'm just going to cut some threads, make it a little bit tidier. Not that it's tidy really, because it's this contrasting thread, but never mind. This is all for the purpose of showing you what we're doing. So these two are my top panels for my tray bag, and this is where I'm going to put the zip. Now I don't know if you can see, but the edges that had double turn, I've put them all together along that edge, and that creates a nice edge to put your zip in. Doesn't really matter, but it's just, let me see if I can bring this. There we go. So this has got the double turned edge on each of these, so that creates a nice edge for the zip to go. Now, how do we do our zip? So here I have an open-ended zip. Now, I've not been able to find the correct size open-ended zip. So in the instructions, I show you how to shorten this zip, and I'm going to show you how to do it now. And again, I'm using a white zip to show you so that you can see more clearly. In this kit is actually a red zip because it goes really nicely with the outside fabric. But for this instance, I'm showing you on white. So I'm going to pop these two panels away so we can concentrate on the zip. And I'm actually going to put it that way because I am going to take my ruler, and this is 7.5, it's just over 7.5 inches long because of the way you sew it. So I want to make this zip to finish 7.5 inches. So I've just got the 7.5 on the end there, here, and this is the 7.5 here, and I am going to mark it with quite a dark pen so that you can see it. I've marked the 7.5 inches. Now what I would like to do is create a 45-degree angle on both sides. So I have just lined this ruler up so it creates a 45-degree angle, and I'm going to turn that over, and I'm going to put a 45-degree angle on this side, a little bit off because I slipped. There we go. So we've got that position there, and I am going to open up the zip, and I am actually going to pull it into two halves. And I'm going to start on this edge because this is a zip edge, and you want your slider to be at the bottom. And what I'm going to do is fold that on the line, and I'm going to put a pin in there and a pin in that line there, just to hold it in place. And I am going to take a needle and thread. Now I have got black thread on my needle, just again so that you'll be able to see my stitches, and I put a knot in the end of the thread. So I'm just going to take it, draw the needle through the very edge of the zip and go across the bottom, and then I am just going to take little back stitch. I'm going to take that one out now because I've secured that end. I'm just doing a little back stitch. Now you can do this on the sewing machine. It's just, I find where this fold is, this fold here, it does get a bit clunky under the sewing machine, and I just find it easier just to do a little back stitch along that line, that 45-degree line that we've marked there. And when I get to the end, I'm going to secure my thread. Take that pin out now, I don't need that. Doesn't have to be neat because this is all going to be, you're not going to see this once you've finished your zip. So I've got to that end, and I am going to put a knot in that end there. So I'm going to run my needle up and just catch a thread or two and pop my needle through that hole and snip that thread off. Now, what that does is create a 45-degree bend in your zip. And what I'm going to do is just finger press that edge over, and then we want to trim this off like this so that it runs parallel. So if we go like that, you can see it runs straight with the rest of the zip. Now what happens when you draw that zip slider up is it doesn't go any further because you've got a 45-degree angle in there. And you're going to do that on the other side as well. But because we're going to put this into a quilt as you go tray, there's no lining to conceal this section here. So what I do is I use a bit of fancy bias or just some bias binding. So what I'm going to bring my ironing board over, because what I'm going to do is press this binding in half. Now I've cut it slightly longer than the zip, and I'm going to press that in half. So it just makes it slightly easier to sew. And then what I'm going to do is fold over about 1/2 inch on one end and press that down. And then press it again just when it's been folded in half. So let's take my iron and board away, and all I'm going to do is take this to the sewing machine and sew down that section there. So pop that under the sewing machine. Oops, I haven't changed from zigzag, so bear with. I'm just going to stop that, start that again, and off we go. There we go. I'll finish that off. And then bring this over. I made a bit of a mess because it started off as zigzag, but it doesn't matter. And then I am going to trim this down again, and I'm going to take a bit of the thickness away because it's a lot of layers going to be in this corner. And all I'm going to do is pull that through like so, and just poke that corner out with my scissors. So now this is back the way I want it to be. All I then need to do is insert my zip in that section there, and I'm going to pop a pin in, and that's going to go through the zip, through the bias, and catch it on that side too. And I'm going to go down the zip, catching the zip and both sides of the bias with a pin. I'm going to move this right up to the end. Oops, there we go. And I'm going to leave it at this one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew along this binding, and I'm going to sew it from this side because this is the side you're going to see in your tray. So let's go back to the sewing machine. We're not on zigzag stitch now, we're ready to rock and roll. So I haven't even put a zipper foot on this either. I'm just going to be careful sewing that end bit because it is thick and it's got a plastic coating. So we just start along there I did sew over my pin, which I shouldn't have done. Let's take this one out before I get to it. Now this is sewing through all 3 layers. So it's nice and easy, quick job to do really. And I'm just going to go down to about here and finish off. I'm going to go back here. So I've stitched along here. Now I've got to sort this end out. And the reason I stopped is because my machine, this is quite a chunky slider on my zip, and my machine presser feet don't raise up enough for me able to slide it while I'm still stitching. So if I stop there, I can come and sort this end out and then finish off the zipper. So what we need to do is I'm going to pop a pin in there, and this is where we need to finish our bias binding, where the teeth of the zip finish. So I've just made a little impression with my nail there, and you could, if you haven't got nails, you can just pop a pin of where that needs to finish. I'm taking that holding pin out, and I am going to fold over where that pin is and give that a little press with my fingers. It doesn't really need to be pressed with an iron. And then I'm going to trim this back because I've got a little bit too much. I'm going to fold that over. I'm going to slot my zip in there. I'm going to pop my zip, I'm going to pop that pin back in there to hold that in place, and then I'm just going to fold under that little edge there, hold it to the back, pop that little edge in there, and I'm going to pop that pin all the way back through those, and we tuck that in, and I'm going to take that to the sewing machine and finish that little bit. Make sure to take my pin out, and when we get to this end, I'm going to sew carefully because you have got lots of chunky plastic teeth and the end of the zip, so you've got quite a lot going on there. So I'm not going to put my machine under too much pressure because you don't want to break the needle and you don't want to break your sewing machine basically. So I'm going to trim all those threads off. So this is the, and this thread here. So this is the worst side to do because you've got your teeth in. And then if you slide that back in, you can see your slider's not going to go anywhere, it's finished. You do the same on the other side. So here is the finished zip. Let's show you here. Now you can see one side slightly longer than the other, but that doesn't really matter because we're going to insert it into our zip tray bag ends. So what I'm going to do is firstly divide it into two because it makes it easier for stitching, and I'm going to sew the first side on. So I'm going to just pin this in place like so, and we're just, that edge of the tray bag is just covering the edge of the binding. And I've just moved the zipper slider, and we're going to take that to the sewing machine and sew along the edge. So here we go. Again, I haven't bothered putting a zipper foot on my machine. I've just got my normal foot on, And again, I'm stitching it in white so that you can see, but you would use a coordinating thread so you couldn't see this. And I was very cautious when I started because you've got a lot of thickness to start with in that where the open-ended part of the zip is. So you don't want to go in all guns blazing and break your needle. And again, what I'm going to do on this seam here, I'm just going to finish off, because as I said before, my presser feet don't raise up enough for me to be able to move the slider. So I'm going to move the slider while it's out and then go put it back in, and where that seam is, I know that's where I've got to start sewing again. Oops. So we'll start again. And that just makes my life easier. Now when we get to the end here, it's very bulky. So I'm going to pop my fingers there so that it stays in place because I've removed the pin. But I just want to go very slowly through that. Can you see my machine is struggling? So I just, and you can hear it. I've just struggled a little bit. Just be gentle with your sewing machine on that. So let's show you here. So this is where I joined, I did one section of zip and then the other. So I'm going to just take those threads away. I've got a few on the back. Take that away and take that away. So that is one side. And when it comes to putting the other side in, what I do is I put the zipper back together again as one, like that. And then I take the other half, and you see these seams, I want those to line up really, because it just makes it look so much more professional. So that one's lined up, so I'm going to pop a pin in there. And then this one is lined up here, so I'm going to pop a pin in there. Oops, oh, lots of layers to go through. No, it needs me to hold it, I think. There we go. And then I just want to make sure that the ends are level, which they are. And you can see a little bit of the binding, but this edge is going to get sewn up, so you won't see that bit of binding. So let's pop a pin in there and a pin in the end here, like that. Then I'm going to unzip the zipper again, so that I'm going to sew this edge up. So back to the sewing machine, and we'll put it under, and we're starting on that very bulky end. So I'm taking my pin out and I've started really gently. I'm taking it steady because I don't want to ruin my machine, and I don't want to ruin my work either. Now this side hasn't got the slider in, so I can sew all the way along to the end on this one. And as you can see, removing my pins as I go. I'm going to get up to this clunky end again, which has got like a plastic tab at the end here, which is very, very hard. So just gently, just hold that in place. And there we go. Finish the stitch off with a back tack. All very gentle, you don't want to go mad. So we've done that, and I'm going to just trim the threads off. And as I said before, you do it in a thread that doesn't show up. And that is how you shorten an open-ended zip and you insert it into your tray. So let's go on to the next section. So next we're going on to the construction of your tray bag. Here is one I've made earlier. I've already sewn the ends because they are sewn by hand. As you can see, I put a red zip in this one because I just think it goes beautifully with these fabrics. But I want to show you how to press it so that it looks nice. So I've got my pressing mat on the bench here, and what you want to do is press these seams here so that you get a nice crisp fold when your tray bag is made. So I'm just giving that nice press with a hot iron on that side, and I'm going to fold it over and put a nice press on this side. Now you also, it's a bit tricky for me because I've secured the ends there, but you want to do this center seam as well. Because it turns into like a elongated cube, you want all of those edges to be nice and crisp. So when that's done, what you need to do is fold your end tabs in and give that a good press on the end. But you're not just doing this pressing here. To make it fold nicely, you need to create some crease lines 45 degrees on each side of this end tab. So I'm going to press there, give that a good press, and then you can see the fold line here, and then fold it over again onto this side and give that 45 degree a good press too. So there's not an awful lot left to do. All you have to do is hand sew, let's move my pressing mat, is hand sew these edges to secure them. Now you can either do that with an overstitch or a Nicholas stitch, and there's another YouTube video on that, so that your ends come in like that, and you're going to sew down these two edges, and that will create your tray. I'm just going to pin those in place so that you can see, and I will hand stitch those a little later. So let's just pin those in place to give you the idea of your tray. So that is your tray. This side I've sewn in already, but the other thing that I do is put a little popper. So if I grab this one and undo it, you can see I've just popped a little popper to secure that just until you open your tray. So all you need to do, there's some positionings on the patterns, is sew a little popper on each side, and then that will press like that, and hey presto, you'll have your caddy tray bag. How cool is that? So it is a lovely little project to make. This one I will finish off later, and I'll put some photos on the website and on YouTube of it finished. It's a nice little project to do. It's great for you because you can use it, but they're great. They make great little gifts. So once you've got your template and your pattern, you'll be miles away. You'll be able to make loads. Just need to hold some open-ended zips, because that allows you to open the tray wide. I hope you've enjoyed this little tutorial. I certainly have. I've had a lovely afternoon sewing with you. I hope you enjoy making your tray bags. But until next time, happy sewing.